Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. We welcome your questions and comments by email to dj@artistfirst.com. All past shows are available in podcast form. Visit ArtistFirst.com. And here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And we want to thank you, our listening audience, for making a choice tonight. and we hope you did it of your own free will. No one is actually, you're not under duress listening to this.
Oh, my.
Oh, my. And I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
Of our own free will. And that's tonight's topic tonight, isn't it, Mark? It's
Yes.
I guess you could sum it up as free will, but this is an interesting, the topic for tonight's discussion came out of an interesting thought that you brought up the other day while we were sitting and just talking to each other, as we do often, which is what role does free will play in a universe of infinite possibilities? And really we kind of elaborated upon that, not necessarily just possibilities, but the fact that if you consider a universe, or as they say these days, a multiverse, where every, this is, maybe we spend just 2 seconds on this. The universe is something that is a term people throw around all the time. Oh, the universe. Universe owes me this, universe owes me that. But, the term universe really means not just everything, but to the exclusion. In other words, it is an all-encompassing infinity. And it's an infinity in every possible dimension, the dimension of possibility, the dimension of space and time. And sometimes people have talked about the fact that, if the universe is infinite, then every possible outcome of every action is or will happen somewhere in the universe. So there's a completely identical you somewhere else in the universe that decided not to have sugar in their coffee today. Well, so this idea, though, that if every possible you and every possible outcome of every possible decision that you might make at any possible instant somehow exists within the universe, sets itself up against the idea of determinism, of being able to determine your next action, of free will. And it kind of puts this idea of, the illusion of free will. That actually everything we do is not out of our own decision. Everything we do is just one of the infinite possibilities. So we set this up, and we thought, well, let's talk about it a little bit, because, is that the right concept? Is that what we're dealing with in this, let's call it, the universe of all possibilities? Or, which seems more likely from both the empirical standpoint, from the point of view of a person moving their way through life, it seems like you're making your own decisions, things happen, you react to them, as well as from the point of view of really some cutting-edge science, the cutting-edge science of quantum mechanics and quantum indeterminism shows that there is an incredibly arcane, I'll say, relationship between the observer and the observed, and that, in fact, one requires the other, in the sense that we have now proved through experiment multiple times this very odd concept that an event is held in abeyance until it is observed. The most classic example of this, which probably everyone has heard about, is the wave-particle duality experiment. But in short, what it says is that you don't know whether you're dealing with a wave, which is something like an energy wave or a wave in the ocean, or a particle, which is something like a ball, a golf ball or a bowling ball, until you observe it. And it can be the event of its creation and the effect of its existence, whether it behaves one way or another, is well known. If it's a ball, it does this. If it's a wave, it does that. Yet, you can set this thing up, let it go, no one watches. You wait minutes, hours, as long as you want. Then somebody says, let's look, and all of a sudden it collapses, this indeterminate state of many, 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 Planck times, an infinite number of Planck times later, collapses into something which says A or B. And so this flies in the face of our kind of determined, the idea that, well, it happened already, it's in the past. Well, no, not really. It hasn't really happened until you looked at it. And that's the funky, weird thing which says that the observer is incredibly important for every tiny piece of the universe to move forward into what we call reality.
Okay, that particular experiment is referencing the nature of light. The big debate was whether light is a particle or a wave. That was the whole question. And through that, they discovered, repeatedly, mind you, this is an experiment that was done over and over again.
Over and over.
And the result was always, it depended on what the observer saw.
Mm.
Without the observer there, it's indeterminate.
Right.
In a nutshell, that's what that was saying. When you translate that into the observer, the person themselves, does that mean that everything that's happening around you that you're seeing or expecting needs you there for it to coalesce?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, it means that what you're choosing is awfully important for what you're coalescing. In a lot of ways, they're saying people have termed it manifestation. Yes and no. It has to do with the reality and consciousness that you yourself are in. Maybe if we go back a little bit, and because I've heard people say, well, if I choose one road and I didn't choose that other road, doesn't that mean that other road just disappears? Because I didn't choose it. It's like it doesn't exist anymore. And the truth of that means that for your particular lifetime right here and now, the you who made the choice to take, say, the right-hand road, that left-hand road doesn't exist. So that's your coalescing right there.
Mm-hmm.
But in a world of infinite possibilities, to have free will, you need to have the ability to make that choice. So what the quanta, the ability to, how do I say this? There is actually another you that has chosen the left-hand road. And that other you that chose the left-hand road exists. And for that part, that you, the one that chose the right-hand road, is not in the same space as the one that chose the left-hand road. Right. So in effect, it looks like it doesn't exist, but it actually does. It needs to exist in order for you to be able to make the choice. So what does that say for your consciousness?
Right, and that's kind of what we're putting here. The consciousness. This is exactly the right point to start with. The consciousness is that which both exercises and observes. The exercise of free will is a choice. The observation is, where am I right now? What's the now? The now is the observed moment of reality. There are three packets of time in the universe. There's the infinite past, the infinite future, and the observed now. The observed now moves at the speed of time, whatever the speed of time is, the speed of observation. There is a term for it, but we don't need to go into it. The consciousness, though, however, is not just the clockworks of the universe. If it were, there would be no need to observe quantum phenomena. They would observe themselves in regard. There would be no indeterminate state, because the presence or absence of the observer wouldn't matter, because the universe itself would be self-contained. And perhaps there's another discussion there. But because consciousness is in essence experimentally required in order to coalesce the indeterminate state, the superposition is a term that I'll use. It's a state of which there are, let's say, two outcomes, but you can't tell which one they are. And the only reason you can figure out which one it is, because it is one or the other. It's not both, but it's a superposition. It's a probable, let's say, an equally probable outcome. It's not really, but let's just say it is. Equally probable outcome, left or right road, you observe it, and then you now know Margaret took the right road. But you mentioned it earlier, the equally probable outcome of Margaret didn't take the right road, took another road, is equally observable by a different observer in what we might term a different universe, because let's say both are equally probable, you had an equally probable outcome. Therefore, the state of the observer begins to come into play about what happens to the observation, and that's the state of the observer is in essence the observer's free will. The observer observes and chooses. It isn't a static observation, it's a choice observation. So
that has got to be acknowledged, that it is not a static observation. You must participate in it in order to make the choice. In making the choice, it opens the door for the coalescing of an outcome.
And I want to just put a fine point on it. I think you don't have a free will is a term where you don't have just two equally probable outcomes, but you actually have an infinite number of probable outcomes.
Well, we would just start trying to set the concept down, and then you can open the door to a larger number of possibilities.
Well, yes, but what I mean to say is, in the simplest case, you were just talking about light, whether it's a particle or a wave. There really are only two probable outcomes for that. And so the observer doesn't really need free will, it just needs to observe. And I think at the simplest case of the universe, when we're talking about just existence of the universe itself, perhaps non-free will or very simple observation is enough. But once you move yourself out of the quantum world and into the macro world, where you're still dealing with a universe of now infinite possibilities, choice becomes the vehicle by which the universe coalesces into the past and from the infinite possibilities of the future.
Coalescing into the now.
Yes. And that's a very
And you're
good,
reading the past, but you're coalescing into the now always.
that's a very good and fine point. You coalesce into the now, but because of the limits of our ability to process information, we actually always process our information from the recent past, and the recent past can be mere fractions of a second ago. but we're always dealing with that. You know,
I
this kind of
Yes, we're setting definitions down, though.
right. Well, the um, the three states are the three states: the unknown future, the known past, and we can't say we know all the past, but the known past, and then the now, which is unknowable until it becomes the past, but yet requires the instant of coalescence. It requires the instant of choice. And that instant of choice is so incredibly small that it's hard to ever truly put a finger upon it. But yet, without it, nothing happens. The arrow of time does not move forward without choice.
Right. Right. So, at that point, when you're walking your path and you come to all those decision points, in reality, as we said, there are many choices to look upon, and how you choose does matter for the universe that you are walking in. So let's go back just for a second. If you look at it in terms of the you that is exists in the one that you chose, and there's a you that exists in the alternate. So, in essence, your soul has many pieces of you in those infinite realms, because those choices still are made, and the repercussions of those choices are experienced.
Well, this is the what's currently popularized as the multiverse, right? Where, let's say, I like this, and I like it. I'll tell you exactly why I like this. If we just said is absolutely true, and there's some really good, solid scientific fact that's exploring that now. Very, very bright people. The multiverse concept. That means every one of us is a infinite being, because we stretch across all possible multiverses, and every one of us is making infinite numbers of choices through infinite numbers of outcomes through every Planck time of all those universes. So you then look at a cross-sectional being, that somehow in some dimension cuts across all the multiverses at the same time, because we could postulate that the uniqueness of choice and the fact that for every, it isn't A or B. Now it's A to the infinite, B to the infinite. And every time you choose, there's infinite numbers of choices being made at that exact same Planck time through all the multiverses. Now you say to yourself that you're not a tiny consciousness in a vast universe. You're a vast consciousness in an even vaster number of infinite multiverses. And that is a very interesting way of thinking of yourself. You come into existence in every multiverse at once.
You can.
Well, I'm sure there are other multiverses where you don't come into existence, but then you start to talk about probabilities, whether you existed or not. But wherever you exist, you can say that, let's say you start out even in one universe. The first choice you make, you expand your universes, and with every choice, and there are really infinite numbers of choices in everyone's life, no matter how long or short. There are infinite numbers of choices. You have spawned infinite number of multiverses. And I'll just throw into the mix something we've talked about many times, which is the dreaming of the common dream. The common dream would be the intersection, in a weird way, of all those different multiverses. into something where we can share, where in an infinite number of multiverses, we both exist. In an infinite number of multiverses, we have a relationship. In an infinite number of multiverses, all the things, every choice we made, up into including this one, has an infinite number of multiverses where slightly, incredibly small, fine differences exist, and then another infinite set where larger differences exist, until you get to maybe the envelope of where one or other of us doesn't exist, or both of us don't exist.
Probabilities, yeah.
And that cloud of multiverses, or however, cloud is probably the wrong term, that universe of multiverses is the vastness of being, which is what we call you or me. We come into existence and instantly spawn and occupy a vast number, an uncountable number of multiverses. This has an appeal to it. Whether or not we can go beyond theory and try to in some way establish fact here, it may not matter, but it certainly has. It's certainly completely possible.
Yes.
It's certainly completely possible. It's conceivable. It has. You can ground it in good mathematics, and you can figure out what the implications might be. The only thing you can't do is any kind of experiment to prove it, because it's very hard to consult with your multiverse you somewhere.
Well, it brings to mind that Flatland story, where you have the beings who are two-dimensional, living in a world that only has length and width, but no depth, and they're just shapes within this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where we're at. We can only perceive this particular universe.
Right.
And trying to extend ourselves outward means that you have to go beyond the boundaries of this reality.
Right.
Which, because we are beings of more than just the physical, that's what we explore.
Right. And Flatland is a very good analogy, because, again, one could think of the plane that they live in, the length and width, infinitely, no dimension of depth at all.
And most people would consider the Flatland universe, they would say, well, that's an infinite universe. Well, yes, it is. Infinite length and infinite width.
Exactly.
But you're not talking about the third dimension of depth, or the fourth dimension of time, or the fifth dimension of the next.
Right. Well, although you could even say in Flatland they had time, because certainly events were separated by something. So they had a two-dimensional physical universe with the dimension of time. But then if you think of their universes like leaves of paper in a book, where every leaf of paper, although it certainly has a dimension, but let's say it didn't, every leaf of paper is a Flatland universe. Then you stack those leaves of paper up, and you have the multiverses, and make your book as infinitely large as you want it to be.
Right.
Then every word in that universe might have a slightly different variation to it in the next leaf of paper up or down, or however vast and how far you want to go. And so that three-dimensional, let's say multiverse being, in this case, would have aspects of itself in every leaf of the book that, if you connected all those things together, you'd see this three-dimensional being, this vast three-dimensional being from the point of view of each page. It would be an infinitely vast three-dimensional being that you couldn't perceive.
Well, if your universe is just that layer of paper, you wouldn't be able to perceive that coalescence of the multiple layers adding up and forming a three-dimensional being.
Exactly. And so this is a good, sort of a good mental exercise. Think of what we're talking about here. The piece that we alluded to earlier, which was the observer and the observed, means that, our universe in and of itself can be looked at as a static, three-dimensional snapshot in time. Then in the next time increment, whatever that time increment is, everything changes by the tiniest bit, like a movie frame going forward one click. And you say to yourself, okay, I can get behind that. The universe is just clicking along time by time by time by time. But in the free will universe, there are parts of this whole which are indeterminate. Those indeterminate pieces are us. We are indeterminate pieces of the universe because in clockwork fashion, the universe moves. If there were no observers, no independent pieces of the universe that can decide anything, then you have a static clockwork universe that you wind up at the beginning of time, and it winds all the way down to the end of time. And the interesting thing that we've kind of alluded to a little bit, if no one ever sees it, did it ever actually exist? Was it always just a point in time?
That's a Zen cone.
That's it. The Zen, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The classic one is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? But
or the classic one is a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it.
Doesn't make a sound.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these are mental exercises of existence, of consciousness, of the importance of the observer. So take our clockwork universe and take one piece of it, let's not say tiny or huge, one piece of it, and give that one piece of it free will. And you go, well, what is that? You give it the ability to, at any instant in time, decide what it will do next. And that, in essence, is a being which is outside the universe, taking a bit of its clockwork universe and saying, you, mote of dust, what do you want to do today? First of all, poof, you're alive. Second of all, what do you feel like doing? And the dust mote goes, I don't know. Because the clockwork universe never has to worry about what it feels like doing.
It continues onward as it's been set.
Right. Another, and this is something I'll just digress for a moment, but the universe itself, if one postulates that the universe itself or nothing can exist without an observer, it brings you immediately to the creative being, mm-hmm. because the ultimate consciousness must exist prior to the universe, or the universe itself can't exist by kind of quantum law. But who's just that stuff?
Why don't we get back to that subject after our break?
Oh goodness, you're telling me that the observable universe has to take a break?
There's a break coming forth from into the now.
I can feel it. I can feel it coming. All right, well, let's go back to the studio. We'll take a little break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about life.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, the Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief, Dev, is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers. Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is Book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhummusic.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Thank you for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on ArtistFirst World Radio. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
You made it through the singularity of the commercial break, and now we're on the other side now. And
welcome to our universe.
Welcome to our universe, and the fact that you observed the commercials made them exist. So next time. Next time, try not to pay attention. Well, we are talking this evening about a very, literally the vastest topic you can have. But I think an interesting point we made just before we went to the break was the fact that there is good, well-established scientific experimental fact about the necessity of an observer for things to coalesce into one state or another, and that happens at the quantum level. Now, the thing that I said just at the end of the break there was the fact that the universe itself, in its simplest form, the primal singularity, if you will, required an observer. And this is sort of prima facie, not necessarily proof, but certainly evidence of the need for a superior being, or a being that existed prior to the universe. And then there's very good scientific thought. A lot of people who are being paid a lot of money to sit on their butts and think about these things, about what happened prior to the Big Bang. But we're not going to go there. That's a whole nother, we could spend 10 or 12 hours, and it would be a 7-bong limit on the what happened prior to the Big Bang. But tonight, I think we should refocus ourselves a little bit about, we're talking really about free will. And I just want to bring into the discussion our quote. It's a very interesting quote about this, and I think it sort of frames it in a way that people can very readily grasp. Life is like a game of cards. We all think of a game of cards as being sort of a game of chance. The hand you're dealt is determinism. These are the cards you have. This is your situation, if you will. The way you play those cards is free will. And I would go one step further. The quote is beautiful, but I'd say one step further. Who are you playing? Because you don't play cards alone. You put your cards on the table in response to other cards. Or you see, for each hand that you play, you then see, well, who won? Who lost? What were the stakes? What happened? What do I do next? A game of cards is a microcosm, because you are both the holder of the cards, you are drawing them from the unknown, the deck. You then get to look at them, you observe them, and then you get to play them, which is the interesting part. Observing where you are doesn't mean that you do, that if you get an ace, you absolutely have to go into box B. You get your cards, and then you're allowed to play them. You're allowed to let them look and say, well, what card should I play? And what outcome would I like? Whether I get it or not is another matter. But what outcome would I like? And that part of the universe that allows, that is both the observer and the player, is the part of the universe which we say encompasses or embodies free will. You are not a clockwork piece that just kind of clicks along. You are a piece of the universe which gets to take cards, a limited set of circumstances that you can perceive and observe, and then play the cards, modify the circumstances. Say, I'll do this and not that. I'll grab A and not B, and then see what happens. Get another card. See if you win. See if you lose. See if you like it. See if you don't. All those things are wrapped up in free will and in the vastness of you. And we talked about multiverses, the fact that we spread ourselves through these things if we think of every possibility. But even if you just narrow it down and say, someone's feeding you the cards, you get to look, you get to see the stakes, you get to make a bet, you get to play your cards, and you get to win or lose. That's kind of life. It's kind of the whole thing of free will. It's your card game. It's the house's cards, but you get to play them. And sometimes you only get one card, and sometimes you get more than you know what to do with, but you still get to play them. And you get to win, and you get to lose, and you get to love, and you get to laugh, and you get to die.
Mm-hmm. Well, you get to choose the game you play with those cards.
It's true. It's true. And I think we can all appreciate the fact that, quote unquote, the universe deals you cards. It deals you situations. It deals you probabilities. It deals you things that you can change, things that you can't change, things that you can do, and things that you can't do. But then you always have to choose, because the game doesn't play itself.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that an interesting point?
Yes. You have to play the game.
Right. If you're going to be there, you really need to play the game.
Yeah. And it's very evocative. So this quote really kind of put it all together into a nice way of thinking about it. Free will in the infinite universe The infinite universe is a deck of cards with no end and no beginning. But it is just a deck of cards. It's clockwork. It's infinite possibilities that are dealt to you. You can hold so many of them, whatever it is. Maybe it's 5-card stud, maybe it's 52-card pickup, but you have, you have certain number of cards you can hold.
All I can think of is children.
Yes.
It's this huge explosion of cards.
Well, sometimes you have to play 52-card pickup, but you get some cards, but those cards are in your hand, and then somebody says to you, or you say to yourself, well, what do I want to do? I have to play the cards. I have to play the next round, the next hand, and then I'll get more cards. The tarot is a very interesting thing. Divination is something that's gone back to prehistory. People always want to know what the future holds. It's very interesting that
it is interesting.
That we use cards and many other types of things where you have a certain realm of possibilities, the whole deck of the tarot. You then take them and you randomize them. You shuffle them up, which we do in every card game. Then you deal them out. And then you then try to make sense of them with the tarot or with the playing cards. You then play them. You do something.
Well, with the tarot, it's a different usage of those cards. I mean, they're all cards. They're all paper. But the symbolism on the tarot is different. Links up to different archetypes, as well as certain things that happen in a person's life. Each card can represent a whole bunch of things. And when you shuffle them, you're actually asking a question. And I always wonder, so who are you questioning when you do this? And frankly, my own observation, you are asking that multitude of infinite yous a question that's inside of you. So the tarot seems to function almost as a way to organize those infinite possibilities into likely probabilities according to the question. It's fascinating, really, when you look at it.
Well, I like that. I mean, divination, whatever vehicle, it's often, it always encompasses sort of a microcosm of what we see in the universe around it. There's always a random element to it, because we know that the universe has a certain degree of what we call randomness. There's a heat uncertainty. Randomness is uncertainty. So you randomize the tarot deck while thinking of a question. And what you're trying to do is then use the manifestation, the coalescing function of observation. You put down a certain pattern of tarot cards, or with the divinate, you roll the bones. You put the I Ching,
runes,
and the runes. You shake the things until one comes out. So this idea of a randomization, which leads to a manifestation, which then gives you a tarot is wonderful because you're talking about you're supposed to focus as hard as you can on a clear question. The more diaphanous your question is, the less specific your answer will be. So you make a very clear question. Try to hold it into your heart. You randomize the thing, and then you deal it out, and you look for this slice of manifestation through the randomness of the deck. It's an analog of what we do on a daily basis with the universe as our deck and our observation and decision, our free will acting in the universe as our manifestation. And we're looking with tarot or anything else to try and, narrow that. It becomes a lens through which we can see perhaps a little bit into what the future may hold. We say, well, this is an analog of us. And we ask a question of the unknown, and we then throw this thing down and look at it and try to see, well, if I had done that, or if this question was coming up, what might occur? And
right. And it's fascinating, really, because the cards are actually two-dimensional objects.
They are.
And here you are, a three-dimensional being or four-dimensional being, and you're using these little flat things to try to figure out what is unfolding in front of me. What haven't I seen? What have I seen? How do I actually feel about the whole thing? It's fascinating to me because you have a way of beginning a conversation with you.
Yes. Yes. When you're living your life in consciousness, as Tolle would say, as a conscious being, as a true observer with free will, the actual events in your life can be like tarot cards. They can come in and you don't ascribe to them a evaluation of yourself or of you as the observer or the consciousness. You say, well, that happened.
Right.
That happened. That happened. And now I can say, I will do this, or I will do this, or I will do nothing. And you have made it so that you are the consciousness playing the game. When you're in the moral, when you have not separated yourself into consciousness being and the universe, which is the deck of cards, when you have intertwined the two, you now, unfortunately, are lost. You lose the focus. You lose the clarity of being the observer and the true, pure free will, and you find yourself like, oh, everything's always happening to me, and I don't know what to do, and I'm getting overwhelmed, and I'm spinning, and I don't know where I am, because now, instead of being a consciousness, you have fragmented yourself into the dream.
What I found fascinating is that whenever someone asked a question and they were afraid, they were truly afraid in that state, they would always pull out the cards that were the ones that were awful.
Right.
All the nasty, all the cataclysmic, all the pain, the sorrow, the strife. They got it because their question was based in fear. And that's the other thing I wanted to go back to, the quanta.
Yes.
Which is frequency.
Yes.
It's understanding the frequency by which you're holding your question, if you would. You do that on an everyday basis. You go approach the whole world with this openness or question, and that frequency that you're holding as you ask the question of the world around you is pretty much what you get back, if not amplified. So it's the quanta that you're holding is the response, the coalescing of the probability patterns that happen.
I would even say it even more strongly. In consciousness and in free will, the attitude, the frequency with which you hold your consciousness and act in your free will absolutely influence what comes back or what you observe. The phrase "beauty is in the eye of the beholder" is trite, but in fact, that which the consciousness observes is a function of what the consciousness is holding as its frequency. If you hold frequency in the light or in the highest frequencies, no deck, no card, no observation can touch you and bring you lower. Even what we would consider the lowest of circumstances will be elevated by a high frequency observer. Similarly, the converse is true as well. You determine your reaction to circumstance, to the cards, and your intention in playing them will actually result in the next round of play moving in the direction that your consciousness is holding. There's a feedback loop here, which you get to set. You get to set your consciousness at whatever level you wish it to be, and then whatever cards are brought to light and played, you play them through that consciousness level. As you said, if you approach every situation with negativity and fear, it becomes amplified.
You've narrowed your ability to see your possibilities down to only those gray or dark areas and no light in them.
Well, even better, I would say that you are manifesting the gray and dark areas through your own observation of them. And
but what I'm saying is if you're holding those negative frequencies,
yes,
you cannot perceive the higher ones, the lighted ones. You have to let go of that frequency in order to perceive the possibilities that are set in front of you.
Which is, I think you would agree with the statement that elevating and we said this before, when you move into consciousness and you elevate your consciousness, the universe comes along with you because all possibilities are there. And your ability to observe and coalesce them is a reflection of your being's consciousness, not the other way around. In other words, once you've been made a part of the universe which is independent and has free will, you then get to navigate through your own energies, through your own frequencies, anywhere within the possibilities of the universe. If it's A or B and you consistently choose B, you're navigating in that direction. You'll feel those energies. And if you consistently choose A, you're navigating in that direction. You'll feel those energies. And it's many more than that. It's every quantum again. It's every frequency from zero to the highest that you can navigate through. And
for you to choose, where do you wish to reside? Maybe that's the best way to ask the question, because people think, oh, I'm going to choose, and they think that you just choose mentally.
Right.
And that doesn't work. Mental choice is doesn't determine your overall vibrational frequency. It's I don't know how to explain that.
Well, I think it's too easily polluted by circumstance and by likes and dislikes. And just to go back to the frequency idea, remember the other beautiful, perhaps not yet completely fleshed out theory of string theory,
right?
Which succinctly says that all reality is just a vibrating string with a certain frequency. All reality, everything, what we think of as particles, waves, trees, everything, is just vibrating strings at a level far below what we can perceive.
See, I think of that as again, we're going back to flatland. That's just a slice. I personally think it's the membrane theory, which is a more full description of the universe. And this is what I mean by your bubble that you are intersects with another bubble with someone else.
Right. Then
the intersection is a two-dimensional surface, which is your string.
Right. I love your brains, baby.
Membrane theory, yeah.
Membrane theory. It was just too good to pass up.
You couldn't resist. I know.
Couldn't resist. But I do love your brains. And thinking of it at that level, I think can get in the way because it sounds so blessedly complex. The idea of tarot and the idea of the cards is it kind of makes it a very good analogy of the player and the universe, which is the deck. And that's why I think in many ways that all the games of chance that we play are so evocative and appealing, because they are analogs of life. Life is an infinite set of cards and the player. And then you're playing with somebody. You're playing against somebody. You're winning, you're losing. The cards that you draw, the next set of cards that you draw, is again maybe part of the energy. It isn't necessarily always random. If you play a certain card, it has a frequency to it. How you play it has a frequency to it, and it calls from this infinite deck other cards of similar frequency. You coalesce the universe as you play, but you also get to choose. And if what you're coalescing isn't the frequency that you desire or reflect, you may move that frequency of coalescence to something which is more compatible with you. We see it as choosing our life path, but in essence, because we are choosing our life path, we're also doing it with the energy, the frequency that we possess. We then come into resonance with others of that same frequency. Relationships develop. The intersection of our frequencies with the other becomes the common dream. And we feel this and we know this at a visceral level, but it's very easy to get mixed up in the masses of cards. It's the Alice in Wonderland, all the cards in the air. So Tolle's advice is to take that moment, separate yourself, take yourself back, and realize you are the consciousness, you are the being, you are the observer as well as the player.
Yes, become acquainted with your consciousness.
Yes.
Because that is who you are.
Exactly. And I am Michael Lyons.
Oh. And I'm Margaret.
And this has been The Soul of the Everyman, and that card has been played.
And thank you for listening.